Hi, welcome back to my channel. They call me Saki. And I just wanted to jump on for a few minutes because I promised you all in the last video, if you had any interest, about how I've been working remotely. So I have been working remotely for the better part of about maybe off and on for about 20 years, from around 2004 all the way up until now. But there was a period in there where I didn't work remote. I worked in an office for about 5 years, well, maybe 4 years. And then from 2017 all the way through now, 2025, I have consistently worked remotely. And excuse me, I'm going to tell you all how I do it, what I do, and what are some of the other things that I've done. So in some cases, when I've worked remotely, it was partially remote. It was in an office that I rented, and then there were days when I went out to see a client. And then over the last 8 years, it's been 100% remote. Well, let me take that back. The 6 years it was 100% remote. In the last 2 years, basically 95% remote. And I go out to the client now maybe every other week, but since my surgery I have not gone out, so I've done all my meetings virtually. So I guess I'll tell you what I do and how I do it. I am actually a CPA, which is a certified public accountant. So back in 2003 is when I got my license as a certified public accountant. And I left probably 2003 to care for my mother, who had knee replacement at the time, like August of 2003. And then she recovered fairly quickly, and I ended up going back to work in an office. And then I actually ended up getting laid off somewhere towards the beginning of 2004. And from that point, and like April 2004, I decided I was done with working for corporate America and I would start my own accounting practice. And that is what I did for 10 years, from 2004 through 2014. So I did my own accounting practice and I did consulting work. So the accounting work, where I had my own clients, I actually rented an office space and I worked there. And I would go out and see my clients maybe once a week or once a month, which would equate to once a week for the amount of clients that I had. But then I also did some consulting work, which would require me to be in an office for some months. It could be 3 months, 6 months, depending on what the project was and how much they wanted to pay me. So if they paid me well, I was willing to leave my office space and go work in someone else's office. So for the better part of those 10 years, I did work remote, but it was partially remote. But then when it got closer to like 2008, I was 100% remote with an occasional time going out. My mom had became terminally ill and my dad was sick as well. Basically terminally ill with Alzheimer's. So anyhow, so I ended up shutting my office down and moving everything into my parents' home, which was not my home because I was married. Well, I am married. And so I would work from my parents' home remotely. And as the diseases progressed on my parents, I ended up being in the home with my parents more. So it became pretty much me full time there and working remotely. So that's why I said for like the better part of 20 years off and on, I've been remote. In the last 8 years, I would say 90 to 95% remote, with occasional over the last 2 years having to go out. But for 6 years, 100% remote. I didn't have to go anywhere unless I chose to go somewhere, and that would be a co-working space just to get out of the house. So that's how I did it. I am an accountant, and that's what I do. However, you don't have to be an accountant to work remotely. So for me, I only apply for jobs that are remote. If it is not remote, I won't apply for it. If a recruiter happens to call me, my first question is this position remote? If they say no, then I said I'm not interested. If they say it's hybrid, I'm not interested, because I know I have to work remote. My husband had two massive strokes back in 2017, and that is why I actually ended up on that particular job that I worked for 6.5 years. Well, 5.5, 6 years. I became remote. They converted me to remote. That's why I said for the better part, I was off and on. So from 2017 all the way up until I got laid off in 2019, and I'll do a video on that about how I got laid off in my 50s and what I did to recover. So, yeah, so when I got laid off in 2019, it was a month before the pandemic, the shutdown. So I actually ended up working a project outside of the home. It wasn't remote for like a month just to see what was out there and what was going to be my next move. And that didn't go well. So anyhow, they didn't like me. So I ended up not working there anymore. And then the pandemic hit in 2020. So while the pandemic was happening, my plan was to reopen my accounting practice, but with a new name and a whole new attitude. But with that, caregivers stopped coming to work. So it left me having to care for my husband on my own. And I had actually found out that I had issues with my cervical spine, so I shouldn't have been doing anything, but the caregivers didn't come. So at that time, I had gotten a huge severance package from my last job, and I was going to use that money to reopen my business. Well, for the better part of 2020, I didn't work. So I ended up having to use that money to live, and it went fairly quickly. So I didn't start another position until October of 2020, which happened to also be a remote role. And it was a client facing role, which was also difficult because, again, my caregivers were not showing up. But I did it to the best of my ability. And then I happened to get a call from a colleague that I had worked with many years before, who had his own recruiting company. He called me up and he's like, hey, I have this client. They need some year-end closing work and audit prep because the person that they've been using is not available, and it's 100% remote, and you can use your own laptop and dial into their system, which happens to be Apple. So I was using my PC to log into their system. So I'm like, yeah, I'm in. And the pay was okay, was decent, but not as much as it could have been for a consulting role, but it was more than what I was making in this other role as an Intuit online bookkeeper. So I ended up taking on this role as a contract basis. It was a media company to do cleanup work, close the books for every month and close the year out, and do some audit prep. So I did that, and it was a mess. But I did it, and as that was coming to a close, I got a call from another recruiter to work with, was it Paramount? Yes, Paramount, as a an auditor. And they're like, "Are you interested?" I'm like, "Yeah." And it paid like double what I was making. But what they didn't tell me, it was only for 3 weeks. So I took it, and it was not hard work. It was very easy, but it was paying me a lot more than what I was making on the second one. And so I did that. And when the 3 weeks were up, I got an extension to, I think, like another week. And then I happened to get a call from another recruiter for another position that paid just as much, but this time it was longer. So it was actually an ASC 840 implementation, which is inventory. So that was something that took me through the summer, and it was probably like a 5-6 month project. And unfortunately, I couldn't go back to Paramount for those 3 weeks for the next quarter. So, but I referred a friend so that I can keep my name out there and get this project. So, mind you, the new project that I was on was also remote, and was a team of probably 10 of us all over the United States, in different states. So that went on for a while. And then after that ended, it took me to the third quarter, and I went back to Paramount and was able to do that internal audit project again. So I did the internal audit project with Paramount for about 4 years, every quarter, which was a filler for my next project. And it just happened to work out that I would get a project, and then it would end, and then this 3-week project would pop up. And then I did that all the way up until 2 years ago, and then it went flat. Everything went flat after I did that first quarter in 2023. Yeah, 2023. Everything just kind of died out. So it left me with nothing. So now I had to figure out, what am I going to do? So I actually ended up getting a grant, a small grant, to start my accounting business over, and I was able to get some videos of me made. And so I did get a client. I did start my accounting practice over with one client. But then I did that work, and I could still be doing it, but it just didn't work out. It wasn't something that I felt would profit me, because the client was trying to make it more beneficial for her. I gave her a huge discount in the beginning, which you never do. And she was trying to like pimp me on it, and I just wasn't having it. So no longer responded to her. And I knew my surgery was coming closer, but I ended up having abdominal surgery. So it pushed my surgery back until out further to like 2024. So I actually ended up getting the job that I have now, which is 100% remote. Well, I keep saying 100% remote. It's 95, 98, 99% remote. Because I only have to go out to the client now. Initially, when I started, it was once a week. Now it's like every other week. But since the surgery, been doing it virtually. I haven't gone out since my surgery. So, yeah. So I started this one, which is a 100% remote company. They don't have an office. So I am working for a nonprofit as a fiscal sponsorship manager. And so that's what I do, and that's how I work remotely. But you don't have to be an accountant to work remotely. You just have to have a strategy on what you're going to do to get a remote role, and draw your line in the sand and say, no, I'm not going to take a project or a job if it's not remote. You may have to take something because you need to keep the lights on, but you continue to look. I never stop looking is the key on why I'm able to continue to work remotely. I never stop looking. Even though I'm employed, I keep my resume updated and I constantly apply. And I've been doing that for at least 10, 15 years. I always keep my resume updated. Even when I had my own company, I kept my resume updated. So, because I'm always looking to make the bigger buck. So my advice to anyone that wants to work remote is to, one, just look. And I honestly find everything on Indeed. And, but I put in the filter of remote. And you will get stuff. And it's very competitive. But it's not to say it's not possible. You just have to decide, pray and trust God and believe that this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do. So I'm not saying not to work because you have to work, but you continue to look. Even when you secure that remote job or project, you keep your resume updated and you keep looking. That's what I do. I never stop looking and I never stop applying. So the other thing is, if you have a desire to work in accounting or bookkeeping, that is something that you can do. And that is one of the easier ways to work remotely. So I potentially have a plan to offer training on how to work as an online bookkeeper. And that would only be if I got people interested, if I would do it. And I don't want to do it the way other people are doing it, where they sell you courses and you got to sit through all these modules. That doesn't work. At least not for me. Hands-on, talking to someone works. So that would be something I would possibly be interested in doing, is helping people find remote work in terms of bookkeeping and accounting, because that's what I know. But I can also show you and help you find remote work. And that's another possibility, that I may just start posting remote jobs as I see it, because when I apply, I also find things that are not what I'm looking for, and I can potentially just do a video and say, hey, here's a remote job. If that's something that you all will be interested in, leave me a comment. And if any of that makes, is of interest to you and makes sense. But I just wanted to jump on. I don't want to keep rambling, but I had a comment in one of my last videos. A young lady said she was interested to know what I did and how I work remotely and how she could too. Well, that's how I do it. I am an accountant. I am a CPA. But there's other things too. There's notary work. There's life and health. And I do all those things. And you can do that remotely. Unfortunately for me, remote online notary is not available in my state. But it is available in many states. So I would just encourage you to think about what you want to do. And if you want to work remotely, then just set in your mind that that's what you're going to do. Continue to work as you're working right now, but get your resume together and continue to apply for remote work, and just never stop. Just keep doing it and set a goal on when you want to achieve that, and know that it's possible. So that's all I have to say about that. Thank you for watching. Leave me a comment, comment, subscribe, share my video. I am trying to develop this YouTube channel. I wasn't so sure I wanted to do that because I just didn't get the views on the other stuff, and that was just on my surgery. But if this type of content is of interest to people, then I'll do more. And I may do another video and kind of tell you how I go about looking and searching, because Indeed is not the only place that I look for remote work. It's one of the major places that I look. but I also make contact with people. So that's another way. You gotta talk to people, let them know that you're looking for remote work. Never, ever, ever leave a bad taste in anybody's mouth if you're doing project work, contract work, temporary work. You always want to leave that place and make them want you back. And that's been a lot of things. I've gotten called back on a lot of roles because people like me. And so that's what you want to do. Don't burn bridges, is all I can say. So, with that being said, have an amazing day, and have a blessed day. So, I look forward to creating another video soon. And if there's something that you want me to talk about in terms of finance, accounting, tax, information that you want to know, remote work, any of the things that I talked about, leave me a comment and I'll try to do a video. Thanks for watching.